Okay, good morning, everybody. We are back and live. Hope everyone had a great weekend. We had a wonderful time. I spent the weekend at Naledi Bush Camp, which is where three of our cameras are. It was really interesting to see the general setup. We had great game drives. The weather wasn't on our side, but we still saw some really good things, especially around the waterholes. Even spent a bit of time at Rosie's waterhole at the Hyde, just watching and seeing. And I must say that it's probably one of the best places to be is at these waterholes, is where most of the activity happens. But it's good to be back, and I'm looking forward for this show this morning for the next hour. Some of you on Facebook and YouTube will be with you for an hour, and then we'll spend another half an hour with those of you on Africam Premium, going through some of the highlights from the weekend, some photographs, and answering some more questions. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, fire them my way, either on Facebook or on the Africam website, and see if we can get answers coming back at you. So for now, we're here at Taupan, and still incredible to just keep seeing the level of greenery. Spending a couple of days in the northern part of the country, it really is no surprise that everywhere is so green. The dams are all full. There was a lot of rain, wonderful thunderstorms. So long may that last, at least until the end of summer. A wonderful herd of zebra. As you can often see, there's definitely no rush, and at this time of year, no urgency to drink or eat. We're going to spend a bit more time here at Tau and wait and see if the camera pans all the way across and have a good look around. There seemed to be some good raptor activity over the weekend. Got some highlight videos of some really special raptors, which I'll show you a bit later in the second half of the show. But that's another thing to look out for. Raptors seem to be quite busy at this time of year. Just want to wait and see if the camera goes across to the other side. Again, just want to get a good idea of the whole picture. There's two black-winged stilts on the right there. Any sign of crocodile? There's a single wildebeest, that dominant bull of the area. Pretty much see him all the time. Don't see him that often with the females though. But I'm sure that'll change next year around May, June, July. At the moment, I'm sure a lot of the females are pregnant, some of them giving birth already. So from his perspective, they can keep moving through. Tricky to make it out, but that looks like impala in the background there. Okay, so we've had a good look around. We'll keep an eye on the camera, but for now I'd like to go across to Tembe, where there's a wonderful big elephant bull. Wonderful tusks. Just look at those. You can see the right hand one slightly smaller, but still very big. Is extra special to see these elephants from Tembe. They really do have the biggest tusks out of most elephants that I've seen. Some in northern Kenya probably give them a good run for their money, but across the board in general, these guys have all got incredible tusks. Let's hope it stays that way. You can see, even though he's got really big tusks, his body's in perfect condition. I think he's going to get bigger as he gets older. I'd say that he's probably somewhere in his late 30s, maybe going into 40. Essentially, he's in the beginning stages of his prime. Typically, elephant's prime will last roughly 10 years, and I mean his breeding prime, that is. So usually from about 34 years of age to 44, 45 is when they'll be at their strongest. So I reckon this fellow is somewhere on the other side of 35. And he'll probably do a bit more growing. Hard to believe. I suspect he probably weighs somewhere in the region of 5.5 tons. The big elephant bulls do get up to 6.5. I tell you what, 5.5 is heavy enough. Gentle giants, the way this fellow is walking is a good example of that. He's just strolling along, smelling the ground all the time. Maybe he's trying to find where some of his mates have walked. But no need to rush around when it's hot. Just like that impala in the background there is in the open area enjoying the breeze. It's quite interesting that it's on its own. It's a female. I suspect the rest of the herd is quite likely around the corner on the left-hand side. But that is a good target. If you were a predator, the lions look like they've been around the waterhole this weekend, so it needs to watch out. The ever-present woolly neck stalks. And that single impala, who doesn't seem to be bothered in the slightest. It looks like it's got a couple of oxpeckers on it. It's in the cleaning station. As we did at Tau, I just want to spend a bit more time looking around, see if anything else comes out here. It's wonderful just to listen to the bird calls and look at the scenery. Let's give it a moment, see if anything else comes to drink. That little call is the call of the oxpeckers. Evening's cuckoo calling as well. Wonderful sounds of the bush. That impala's still there. Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. Let's go across to Kua Pan. Nice to see it's back up and running again. There's a great view of an Egyptian goose. And I think those look like grey tree frog nests as well in the right-hand side. Let's see if the camera zooms in there to be sure. We'll also spend a bit of time here getting a good look around, see if anything comes down to the woodhole or anything more. I'm not sure. I haven't seen these Egyptian geese babies for a while. The camera was down for a couple of days, so maybe we'll spot them. Hope that some of them are still alive. Ah, that's interesting. It does look like a nest on the left, but there's also a woodland kingfisher hiding in the shade. It's a great little view. Such a good looking bird. A wonderful call of summer. That frog nest looks like it's come to the end of its purpose. It looks a bit old. Let's hope that tadpoles survived the fall from the top. I'm sure they did. Let's see if we can have a good look around the waterhole, just in case we can spot the little ones. Egyptian geese, that is. No sign of much around the waterhole today. No sign of those Egyptian geese or the Egyptian geese family. I'm not sure if they could have moved off to another waterhole. We'll have to keep a lookout on that. Okay, we're going to go across to Kura Pan, where the sunbathing is in full swing. These two terrapins enjoying the warmth of the sun and each other. Always a funny sight, a terrapin stack. You can hear the woodland kingfisher in the background. Now, of course, that we're especially listening out for it, it stopped. Now, let's give the camera some time to pan out and have a look around here again. Always good to get a good idea of what's happening in the whole area. There's two more Egyptian geese having a relaxing midday. It's actually been, relatively speaking, nice and cool in these parts, the central northern part of South Africa. So the animals and the birds, everything else can be a little bit more relaxed about having to hide in the shade. They've had really good rains, a bit of a breeze. It's quite a comfortable environment to be in right now. When you have those blue sky days in the beating sun, it's quite a relentless environment to be in. So I'm sure they're all happy with it. One wildebeest. Quite interesting to note here as well, like a tau, to see these single wildebeests. They're hanging on to these territories, and actually they're really good territories. As you can see, there's lots of open space with lots of grass, and of course the waterhole itself. That will all attract the herds at some point. And when they're in estrus, that's what he's waiting for. They wait to try and court as many of them as possible, try and mate with them before they move off into the next fellow's space. So he's going to hang on here by himself. He is a bit of a target for a predator, not dissimilar to that impala on its own. But quite an impressive beast. The blue wildebeest, or brindled gnu. Otherwise, not much out at the moment. We're going to cross over to Olifantskamp, one of my favorite camps. Just always very special to be on the edge of the river. There goes the woodlands kingfisher again. This is where we spent our weekend. It was really a privilege to be there. Wonderful area of Naledi. We spent a lot of our time right here, just above the Olifants River. Saw great crocodiles and hippos, fish eagles, elephants. Really productive area. But as you can see, the river is still very full. We'll cross over to some of the other cameras in this area. And you'll see there's still rain clouds in the sky. In fact, it was raining about 10-15 minutes ago, just before we started the show. So lots of rain still to come. Keeping it nice and green. And of course quite thick, making it tricky for us to spot things. But let's keep panning through here just in case we see something of interest. Okay, also quiet there today. Again, the weather always plays a role in animal movements. So we'll just keep watching the cameras, keep an eye out, because things can change pretty quickly. Just like to go across to Cat's Eye Pan. There's 2 more Egyptian geese. But also a really good example of the type of rain clouds I was talking about. We had that all weekend. We had a whole day of rain. I think it was Saturday. And I think there's a lot more to come, lots more in the forecast. Just have a look around here. The way the camera is pointing now, just for interest's sake, is actually pointing straight towards Naledi Dam. It's not that far away, so it's quite interesting. Next time you see something either at Cat's Eye and heads off that way, or at Naledi, I'll show you the direction when we go there. You can always look out for them popping up at the next camera, essentially. Just gonna stick with the pan here and see what's there. It's funny to see that these Egyptian goose are doing what the ones at Nkora were doing, and the one at KwaMaritani. They all seem to be doing the same thing. The weather is more or less the same. The time of day is of course the same. It's time for a rest. Okay, and nobody home here either. Let's have a look at Naledi Dam, which, like I say, was not that far away from Cat's Eye. Although it looks like a completely different area. It's slightly further up into the woodland. I don't know if those of you remembered from last week's show, we saw a big python coming out of Naledi Dam on the right-hand side. And I said I would measure out the steps. Its tail was still in the water and its head was off on the right behind the actual well. And it was exactly 4.5 steps from the edge of the water where its tail was into the bush where its head was. So that python was at least 4.5 meters long. It's quite a special sighting. But nobody home here either for now. We're going to go back to Tembe. Some more elephants have been at the waterhole. The youngster on the left. And a big bull on the right, but also that big bull's quite interesting. Big tusks, but a relatively speaking smallish body. So I would say that elephant coming down seems to be playing a bit with the youngster. Is somewhere between 30 and 35. Just looking at his body size. But it really is interesting to note the size of their tusks. They're huge. And that fellow who's quite a lot smaller, I would say is somewhere between 20 and 25. It's always quite tricky to age elephants. And as we can see here, you can't really use the tusks as a gauge in the Tembe area. Oh, he's having a wonderful mud bath. That's interesting. That has turned into a wallow. It's usually quite dry. But obviously the rains that have fallen have created a perfect little wallow. Let's watch him for a bit. Clean behind the ears. Incredible how effective that trunk is. Look at that. He's really skillfully getting in behind the ears, and that skin flap that creates shade behind the ears. At the same time, he's churning up the soil with his legs and picking it up with his trunk and throwing it all over his body, and pretty much getting it to all of the tricky spots. So that pan that he's standing in, or that wallow, is a really good example as to how waterholes occur. So you can see that there's a fair amount of undulating ground behind him. It's also at some point been a wallow. If the rains come, big rains, they'll fill up as well. And they might use those to churn up the soil. Buffalo will come down. Everyone will come down and use it, and eventually they'll join each other and form a bigger waterhole. And it's not impossible that this waterhole joins the main waterhole. But that's how these pan systems are naturally formed. And the woolly-necked storks still at it, still cleaning themselves. And that young elephant, I think, might be waiting for its turn in that wallow. Wise to be patient. Folks, we've come to the end of the first half of our show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to stay with us, go across to Africam Premium, where we'll carry on the show and go through some of the highlight videos and snapshots that you, the community, have taken over the weekend. Otherwise, we'll catch up with you tomorrow on the afternoon show in the Hide. For those of you sticking around, let's keep watching this scene. Just quite relaxing to see how much this elephant enjoys being out in the open, mud bathing. Let's see if that youngster decides to take his opportunity. Gonna go and get some sand now. While he does that, I just want to go through some of the snapshots taken recently. And this is an interesting one. We obviously get to see the baboons roosting pretty much every night. But I just thought that this photograph taken by Norm at Olifants River is something different. It's quite a strange angle with the night vision, black and white, of the troop. It's just about to leave the tree, early morning wake-up call. It's just a wonderful view. Slightly abstract. Now we're going to stay with the black and white theme. And we have seen this shot or one similar before, but it really does catch my eye every time. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name properly, but I'm going to go with S.J. Soupbone. Wonderful photograph. And that's Venus, actually, shining bright just before sunrise. It's just a great shot. Again, quite abstract, of the scenery at Tau. We're going to go across to some of the highlight videos, some videos that I've picked out. It seems that there was a theme of raptors at the waterholes. Here's an image of a brown snake eagle being mobbed by a 4-tailed drongo. Cheeky little drongo. And it's quite interesting that the snake eagle doesn't seem to be too bothered. I guess they're quite used to being mobbed by these smaller birds. They don't like them being around. They are potential threats, mostly for their chicks, but this brown snake eagle does specialize in feeding on snakes in particular, but also reptiles. It's also a really nice view. Oh, there was a close one. Of one of the big identifiers when you're looking at snake eagles is that beautiful yellow eye. They have a particularly large yellow eye, very rounded back part of the head, and very sharp hooked beak. You can hear the call of the drongo as well. An interesting relationship and wonderful view of these two. Oops. You can hear the guinea fowl calling in the background as well. There we go. Enough is enough. So we're going to go to another raptor. This time we've got a view of an African hawk eagle who's just had a bath. You don't often get better views than this. You can also hear the helmeted guinea fowl in the background complaining about the presence of this bird. And the drongo. Not happy with its presence at all. Let's see how long it lasts. But these hawk eagles, they also specialize in feeding on birds. So they'll go for reptiles as well. They even go for insects. But it's not unusual for them to catch a francolin or even young guinea fowl. Look at those talons. And the drongo is trying hard to chase it off. It was at the same waterhole that the snake eagle was at that we saw earlier, so the drongo is having a busy time with these pesky raptors. Let's just keep watching. There we go. Also relatively patient, but after a while that drongo won the battle. Okay, now we're back at Tembe here, back on the live stream. And that same elephant bull is now covering his wet body in sand. So we've seen this a lot. They do this pretty much every day. And it's really important to them to do it every day. Keep their bodies clean and free of ectoparasites. So they definitely spend a fair amount of time doing this sort of thing, and otherwise they need to keep eating. But they'll typically do a lot of eating at night. It's cooler, and also a lot of the time the leaves are sweeter and the grass is sweeter during the nighttime hours. Leave the daytime for the waterhole activities. There's a question here from Madiba about the the tracking device or the collar the elephant has, yes, he is wearing one, and we often see them here at Tembe, either on the elephants, in some cases on the lions. So they use the tracking devices for a couple of reasons, mainly for study and research, or one of the reasons a lot of people like to find out the territory size and what area do certain animals cover. But in a place like Tembe, that around the safety of the national park boundary, there's a lot of farmland, local communities. And what happens is, as soon as anyone sees that that elephant has moved outside of the national park where it becomes a potential threat to the people, and the elephant doesn't know it, but the people are a potential threat to it. So a lot of the national park folk will be alerted of its position and try and get it back as soon as possible. And then the next question is, how do you get an elephant back? Depending on how far away it is. If it's really far away, you sometimes need to dart it, just put it to sleep, put it on a flatbed truck, and drive it back. If it's a little closer and one has a helicopter at hand, you can often use a helicopter to herd elephants back into safer areas. That's usually the preferred method. But essentially, it's really important to try and understand their position as quickly as possible and make sure that they don't become a threat, to minimize the human-animal conflict, which is one of the main reasons why a lot of animals don't exist anymore. It's part of a conservation effort. When those collars get put on, I'm sure for a week or two, they're not the most comfortable thing, but it's quite clear that after a little while, they don't seem to notice them and it doesn't become a problem. Oh, he's just picked up some movement, maybe a scent, caught his attention. Maybe another bull might come into frame. Just looking over in that direction again. Let's see if the camera pans out a little bit. Quite interesting to see what's caught his attention. Nothing at this point. Maybe something's coming behind the bushes there. Unless, of course, it heard something that we can't hear. Let's keep an eye on the area and just see if any other elephants come down. But for the time being, I wonder if this fellow is enjoying the peace and quiet of being on his own. You can hear the call of a very beautiful bird called a gorgeous bushshrike. That's my rendition. Just listen out for it. Again, if anyone has a bird book, or you can look for pictures on the internet, it is a very gorgeous bird, very aptly named. It's quite a secretive bird. You don't actually get to see it that often. It's one of the birds I like to try and track down when I'm in the area, because you hear its call a lot. Try and zoom in, walk towards where it's calling from to get a good view. Definitely worth the effort. like to go across to Rosie's pan. Always a nice pan to have a look around. There's actually a dry riverbed just behind the pan. Really perfect environment for leopards, which is one of the reasons why we often see leopard at this waterhole. There's a lovely woodland that hugs the dry riverbed just behind the pan in the direction we're looking at now, making it a perfect space for leopards and other predators. And not too far away from the waterhole, we actually saw a mating pair of lions, so something to look out for. They were also very vocal, lots of roaring, so if anyone towards the evening hours has a chance to have a look at the cams, Rosie's is a good one to keep your eye out. Just before we started the show, there was a group of buffalo at the waterhole, hoping that some come back. But for the time being, they've moved off. I'm sure getting in all that nice feeding, a grass feeding time. Have some weaver nests there, perfectly made, hanging off the leadwood tree. You can hear one of the sunbirds rattling away in the background, very high-pitched call. Sounds like a white-bellied sunbird. Otherwise, the Egyptian geese seem to be holding front and center stage on most of the cameras today. We're going to go across to Taupan again. The zebras are still very much enjoying their space there. Oh, okay. Cows seem to be gone offline. That's okay. Let's go back to Olifants River then in that case. We'll keep an eye on Tau. There's look like baboons, I think, underneath the fig trees on the other side there. There's also some antelope running around under the trees. Yes, there we go. Troop of baboons enjoying the fig fruits. Those are impalas. They'll also feed on the fruits. But most likely they'll also be feeding on the leaves that have fallen down. Let's spend a bit of time with these baboons and impalas. You often see the two feeding together. The impalas spend time around the baboons, especially if the baboons are up in a fruit tree, as they cause a lot of the fruit and the leaves to fall to the ground. And so then that gives them the opportunity to feed on food that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get hold of. Let's sit back and watch them for a bit. Always entertaining activity, especially when there's baboons to see. A little baboon. Not straying too far from its mother just yet. As it gets older, it will get more and more inquisitive about the environment it finds itself in. But for the time being, it's the safest place to be. Close to mum. It's of course where the food is as well. Wonderful, relaxing scene. So it looks like Tau Cam is back up again. Let's just cross to that part of the country. There seems to be a fair amount of zebra and wildebeest activity, especially around that old termite mound. You've seen the animals there quite regularly feeding, or it looks like they're feeding on the soil. That wildebeest might mark its territory, or maybe it's just churning up the soil. Again, they do tend to feed on soil every now and then, just bulk up the nutrition level, get some minerals into the diet. There's a little blacksmith lapwing in the foreground, very busy feeding its way through the new growth of grass and shrubbery. I'm sure for them as well, it's a busy time now. Lots of insects out. That's what they'll be looking for, is insects. Nobody in too much of a rush to come for a drink. Again, at this time of year, there's no urgency for water. They've all had a drink. Those that want to top up and just walk in whenever they want to. There's a group of giraffe in the background on the left. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wow, look at that. 13. A journey of giraffe. Really good example of that name given to them as a group. I think there's 14. 15. Wow, that is quite special. At the moment, it looks like they're not really necessarily coming towards the water just yet. And having a good feed seems to be more important at this point. And like I was saying, there's no real rush for water. They'll also obviously be getting a lot of moisture from the leaves they're feeding on. But I'm sure they'll come down for a drink at some point. There's a big flock of red-billed quellias, those little birds that just took off in the foreground. They're one of the few birds that form those really large flocks. Interesting to note some of the different colors of these giraffes. So generally speaking, the darker the giraffe, the older it is. The males do get darker. So that one sort of on the left there, I think fourth from the left, is very dark. So I suspect that that's an older male, but it's usually got to do with the age. The older they are, the darker they become. So you do get some dark females. That one in the middle, there's a large one that's quite dark, but there's a smaller one that's dark as well. And I suspect that that'll be a female, just an older female that's over the years of excreting oils, that fur gets darkened. And then the lighter ones will be the younger ones. It's a very mixed group here. And not necessarily family members at all. They have a very loose herd structure. It just so happens that they've found each other and congregated in good feeding area. The safety in numbers concept is always in the foreground. Some more interested in feeding than others. I'm not sure if the ones on the right of the screen, if they've come out into the open. Maybe let's see if the cameras can pan out a little bit so we can see that. There's also an elephant. On the left-hand side of the screen, just see the movement of the ears of an elephant. Left of the giraffe and slightly in towards the zebras. Not so clear with the heat haze, but that's a beautiful picture right there. The wildebeest, the zebra and the giraffe. And the elephant that's hiding. Okay, so it looks like the giraffe have just stayed at the base of the hill. No one's come out into the open area just yet. Must be really good eating. We're going to finish off at Olifants Dam, Olifants River. It's just a wonderful place to listen to the sounds. The baboons are still there, enjoying their fig fruits. The constant call of the white-browed scrub robin. Burchell's cuckoo calling, as well as yellow-billed hornbill. So lots of activity. Just quite relaxed activity. That little baboon is sitting in the back of mum, nice and comfortable up there. Great place to be. Folks, we've come to the end of the show for this morning. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Keep watching the cameras. Like I say, you never know what you're going to see. Things can come and go quite quickly on these cameras. Wonderful aspect and part of the concept. You just never know what you're going to see. Folks, I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow in the afternoon show in Hyde. Have a great day further, and we'll see you tomorrow.